Iraqi cleric tells loyalists to leave streets after clashes. An influential Iraqi cleric called on his supporters to withdraw Tuesday from the capital's government quarter, where they have clashed violently with security forces for 2 days in a serious escalation of the political crisis gripping the nation. In a televised speech, Muqtada al-Sadr gave his supporters an hour to leave, and within minutes some could be seen abandoning their positions. Iraq's military announced the lifting of a nationwide curfew, further raising hopes that calm would be restored after fears instability might spread throughout the country and even the region. Iraq's government has been deadlocked since al-Sadr's party won the largest share of seats in October parliamentary elections, but not enough to secure a majority government. That led to months of political infighting between al-Sadr's Shiite followers and his Iran-backed Shiite rivals before it became violent Monday. The chaos began when al-Sadr announced he would resign from politics, and his supporters stormed the Green Zone, once the stronghold of the U.S. military and now home to Iraqi government offices and foreign embassies. They eventually breached the gates of the government palace, rushing into its lavish salons and marbled halls. A day later, his followers could be seen on live television firing both machine guns and rocket-propelled grenades into the heavily fortified Green Zone, while security forces sporadically returned fire and armored tanks lined up. Some bystanders filmed the gunfight with their mobile phones, though most hid behind walls, wincing when rounds cracked nearby. At least 30 people were killed, officials said, before al-Sadr urged those loyal to him to go home, following pleas for restraint from several Iraqi officials and the United Nations. "This is not a revolution," the cleric said in a televised address. Al-Sadr, who spurred his followers to storm the parliament in July with calls for revolution and reform, apologized to the Iraqi people and said he could not support the violence. Many of his followers quickly heeded his call, dismantling their tents and leaving the Green Zone. The immediate shift on the streets underscored his enduring control over his loyalists, and by extension his influence over the Iraqi political class. In addition to the dozens killed, over 400 were wounded, 2 Iraqi medical officials said Tuesday. The officials spoke on condition of anonymity because they weren't authorized to release the information to journalists. In a sign of the fear that the unrest would spread, Iran closed its borders to Iraq earlier Tuesday, though even before al-Sadr's order, streets beyond the capital's government quarter largely remained calm. The country's vital oil continued to flow, with global benchmark Brent crude trading slightly down. Members of Iraq's majority Shiite Muslim population were oppressed when Saddam Hussein ruled the country for decades. The 2003 U.S.-led invasion that toppled Saddam, a Sunni, reversed the political order. Just under 2/3 of Iraq is Shiite, with a third Sunni. Now, the Shiites are fighting among themselves, with those backed by Iran and those who consider themselves Iraqi nationalists jockeying for power, influence and state resources. It's an explosive rivalry in a country where many remain aware of the Iranian government's influence even though trade and ties remain strong between people. Iraq and Iran fought a bloody war in the 1980s that saw 1 million people killed. Al-Sadr's nationalist rhetoric and reform agenda resonates powerfully with his supporters, who largely hail from Iraq's poorest sectors of society and were historically shut out of the political system under Saddam. Al-Sadr's initial announcement that he would leave politics implicitly gave his supporters the freedom to act as they see fit. His speech on Tuesday effectively reined them back in. Before that, the unrest led neighboring countries to issue warnings to their citizens and one embassy closed. In addition to closing its borders, Iran urged its citizens avoid any travel to the neighboring country, citing the unrest. The decision came as millions prepared to visit Iraq for an annual pilgrimage to Shiite sites. Kuwait, which shares a 254-kilometer, 158-mile, long border with Iraq, called on its citizens to leave the neighboring country. The state-run Kuna news agency also encouraged those hoping to travel to Iraq to delay their plans. The Netherlands evacuated its embassy in the Green Zone, Foreign Affairs Minister Wopke Hoekstra tweeted early Tuesday. There are firefights around the embassy in Baghdad. Our staff are now working at the German embassy elsewhere in the city, Hoekstra wrote. Dubai's long-haul carrier Emirates stopped flights to Baghdad on Tuesday. The carrier said that it was monitoring the situation closely. It did not say when flights would resume.